Meadow Creek was a town where everyone knew everyone. The kind of place where kids rode their bikes without helmets, though their parents always told them to wear one, and Mrs. Gable always had cookies baking in her window. The Meadow Creek Savings and Loan wasn't just a bank, it was the heart of the town. Farmer McGregor got his loans there for new tractors. Little Lily saved her allowance there for a shiny, red bicycle. Even Mayor Thompson popped in every Friday to chat with the tellers. It was safe. It was predictable. It was Meadow Creek. The bank stood proudly on Main Street, its brick facade solid and reassuring. Inside, the tellers, mostly familiar faces, greeted customers with warm smiles. The scent of freshly brewed coffee always hung in the air, mingling with the crisp smell of money. It was a place of trust, a place where people felt secure knowing their hard-earned savings were well looked after. Old Mr. Abernathy, who'd been a customer for over 50 years, always joked that the bank was safer than his own house. But even in the quietest of towns, trouble can brew. And one Tuesday morning, just as the sun peeked over the horizon, Meadow Creek's peaceful existence was about to be shattered. A dark sedan, unfamiliar to the townsfolk, idled outside the bank. The driver kept the engine running, a low rumble that barely registered amidst the usual morning sounds. But inside the car, hearts were pounding, and plans were being finalized. This wasn't just another Tuesday in Meadow Creek. This was the day everything changed. This was the day the bank got robbed. The event would shake the community to its core, leaving everyone feeling vulnerable and uncertain. And it all started with a plan, a car, and a pair of gloves. Only one glove would be left behind, a silent clue in a suddenly noisy world. The dark sedan screeched to a halt outside the Meadow Creek Savings and Loan. Two figures, clad in black hoodies and masks, burst from the vehicle. Their movements were swift and practiced, betraying a carefully laid plan. One brandished a pistol, its cold, metallic gleam catching the morning light. The other carried a duffel bag, ready to be filled with the town's hard-earned cash. Inside the bank, the scene transformed in an instant from peaceful to chaotic. The tellers, who moments before were cheerfully greeting customers, now froze in terror. Mrs. Gable, who just popped in to deposit her weekly earnings from her cookie sales, gasped and clutched her purse tightly. Even Mr. Abernathy, the bank's oldest and most steadfast customer, felt a shiver of fear run down his spine. Everyone on the ground. Now, the figure with the pistol barked, his voice raspy and distorted behind the mask. A wave of panic washed over the bank. Customers and employees alike dropped to the floor, their faces pressed against the cold tile. The other robber leaped over the counter, shoving a startled teller aside. "Open the vault." "Quickly," he demanded, his voice sharp and impatient. The bank manager, a kind, gentle man named Mr. Peterson, trembled as he fumbled with the keys. His hands shook so violently that he could barely insert the key into the lock. Time seemed to stretch into an eternity as the robbers grew increasingly agitated. The air was thick with tension. Every second felt like an hour. The only sound was the heavy breathing of the robbers and the muffled sobs of the terrified customers. Finally, with a loud click, the vault door swung open, revealing stacks of neatly bundled cash. The robber with the duffel bag wasted no time, stuffing the bag full of money. Their movements were quick, efficient, and ruthless. Within minutes, the duffel bag was overflowing with cash. "Let's go," the robber with the pistol yelled, signaling their escape. They turned and sprinted towards the exit, leaving behind a scene of utter chaos and fear. As they bolted out the door, one of the robbers snagged his glove on the door handle. Unnoticed in the frenzy, the glove slipped from his hand and fell to the ground, a silent witness to the crime. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder with each passing second. The getaway car, a dark sedan, had long disappeared, leaving behind only the lingering scent of burnt rubber and the echoing screams of terrified witnesses. Within minutes, the Meadow Creek Savings and Loan was swarming with police officers. Leading the charge was Detective Miller, a seasoned investigator with a keen eye for detail and a reputation for solving even the most perplexing cases. He was a man of few words, but his presence commanded respect. His weathered face, etched with years of experience, reflected a quiet determination. He had seen it all, from petty theft to violent crimes, but something about this robbery felt different. Detective Miller surveyed the scene, his eyes scanning every corner of the bank. He carefully stepped over shattered glass and scattered papers, his mind already piecing together the events that had unfolded. He spoke calmly to the distraught tellers, offering words of comfort and reassurance while subtly gathering information. He knelt beside Mrs. Gable, who was still visibly shaken, and gently inquired about what she had seen. He listened intently to Mr. Peterson, the bank manager, as he recounted the robbers' demands and their frantic escape. Detective Miller noticed the tremor in Mr. Peterson's hands and the haunted look in his eyes. He knew that this robbery would leave a lasting impact on the entire community. As the other officers secured the perimeter and collected witness statements, Detective Miller focused his attention on the area near the entrance. He noticed a small, dark object lying on the floor, partially hidden beneath a discarded newspaper. He crouched down for a closer look. It was a glove. A single, leather glove, seemingly out of place amidst the chaos. Detective Miller's eyes narrowed. He knew that this seemingly insignificant item could hold the key to solving the entire case. He carefully reached for the glove, making sure not to disturb any potential evidence. He knew this was more than just a random piece of discarded clothing. This was a clue. This was a start. This was his way in. The bank was a flurry of activity. Uniformed officers were busy taking statements, their notebooks filled with scribbled notes and hastily drawn sketches. A forensics team meticulously dusted for fingerprints, their brushes leaving a faint trail of powder on every surface. The air crackled with a sense of urgency, a race against time to gather as much evidence as possible before it was lost forever. Detective Miller carefully bagged the glove, ensuring it was sealed and labeled with the time, date, and location of its discovery. He knew that preserving the integrity of the evidence was paramount. He handed the bag to a young officer, instructing him to take it to the lab for analysis. "Run a full workup on this," Detective Miller instructed. "I want to know everything about it. The material, the size, any trace evidence, anything that can help us identify the owner." The young officer nodded eagerly, excited to be a part of the investigation. He hurried off to the lab, clutching the bag tightly in his hand. Meanwhile, Detective Miller continued to interview witnesses, piecing together a timeline of events. He learned that the robbers had been quick and efficient, spending no more than a few minutes inside the bank. They had been masked and wore gloves, making it difficult for witnesses to identify them. The getaway car was described as a dark sedan, possibly a Ford or a Chevy, but no one could recall the license plate number. The initial investigation painted a picture of a well-planned and executed robbery. The robbers knew what they were doing, and they had taken steps to minimize their chances of getting caught. But Detective Miller was not deterred. He knew that even the most meticulous criminals often made mistakes. And he was determined to find those mistakes and bring the perpetrators to justice. He started by asking about anything out of the ordinary in the days leading up to the robbery. Had anyone seen suspicious vehicles or unfamiliar faces in town? Had anyone heard any rumors or whispers about a possible heist? The answers were vague and inconclusive, but Detective Miller pressed on, knowing that even the smallest detail could be significant. He knew that solving this case would take time, patience, and a whole lot of hard work. But he was ready for the challenge. He owed it to the people of Meadow Creek. Back at the police station, the lab technicians were hard at work analyzing the glove. They examined the leather under a microscope, searching for any unique markings or imperfections. They carefully collected any fibers or hairs that might be clinging to the fabric. They even ran a DNA test, hoping to find a skin cell that could link the glove to a specific individual. The results came back slowly, each piece of information adding another layer to the puzzle. The leather was high quality, suggesting that the owner was someone who could afford expensive accessories. The glove was a common size, eliminating some potential suspects but still leaving a wide range of possibilities. The DNA test was inconclusive, yielding only a partial profile that didn't match anyone in the existing database. But one piece of evidence stood out, a small, almost imperceptible stain on the inside of the glove. The technicians ran a chemical analysis and discovered that the stain was caused by a rare type of motor oil. This type of oil was typically used in high-performance engines, suggesting that the owner of the glove might be a mechanic or someone who worked with cars. Detective Miller reviewed the lab report, his mind racing. The motor oil stain was a significant clue, a potential link to the robbers. He instructed his officers to check local auto repair shops and garages, asking if anyone recognized the glove or used that particular type of motor oil. As the officers fanned out across Meadow Creek, Detective Miller focused his attention on the bank's security footage. He spent hours poring over the grainy images, searching for any detail that might have been overlooked. He watched the robbers' movements, their gestures, their clothing, trying to identify any distinguishing characteristics. He noticed that one of the robbers had a slight limp. It was barely noticeable, but it was there. Detective Miller made a note of it, adding another piece to the puzzle. He also noticed that the robbers seemed to be familiar with the layout of the bank, suggesting that they had cased the place beforehand. The investigation was slow and painstaking, but Detective Miller was determined to leave no stone unturned. He knew that solving this case would require a combination of hard work, intuition, and a little bit of luck. But he was confident that he was on the right track. The glove was his guide, a silent witness leading him closer and closer to the truth. Detective Miller sat at his desk, the lab report spread out before him. The rare motor oil, the slight limp, the robber's familiarity with the bank, all these details swirled in his mind, slowly forming a clearer picture. He needed something more, a solid lead that could point him in the right direction. He glanced at the corkboard on his wall, covered with photos of the bank, sketches of the robbers, and maps of Meadow Creek. He ran his hand through his thinning hair, a sign of deep concentration. He was so close, he could feel it. Suddenly, a thought struck him. He remembered a conversation he had with Officer Johnson, the rookie who had been assigned to patrol the outskirts of town. Johnson had mentioned a newcomer, a man named Jake, who had recently moved into an old farmhouse on the edge of the woods. Jake kept to himself, rarely interacting with the townsfolk. He drove a beat-up muscle car, a classic Mustang, that he was constantly tinkering with. Detective Miller's eyes lit up. A muscle car, high-performance engine, rare motor oil. It all started to fit together. He pulled up Jake's file on his computer. The file was thin, containing only a few basic details, name, age, address. But there was a photo. Detective Miller stared at the photo, his gaze unwavering. Jake was a young man, maybe in his late 20s, with a rugged face and piercing blue eyes. He had a lean build and a confident stance. But something about his eyes seemed off, a hint of darkness lurking beneath the surface. Detective Miller zoomed in on the photo, focusing on Jake's posture. He noticed a slight asymmetry in his shoulders, a subtle indication of a possible limp. It was the same limp he had seen in the bank's security footage. A wave of excitement surged through Detective Miller. He had a suspect. He had a motive. He had a connection to the motor oil. And he had a possible limp. It was all circumstantial, but it was enough to warrant further investigation. He picked up the phone and dialed Officer Johnson. "Johnson, I need you to do me a favor," he said, his voice firm and resolute. "I want you to keep an eye on this man. His name is Jake. He lives in the old farmhouse on the edge of the woods. Don't approach him. Just observe him. Tell me everything he does. Everything." The hunt had begun. Koo, unaware of the watchful eyes of Officer Johnson, continued his routine. He woke early, the sun barely peeking over the horizon, and headed straight to his garage. The Mustang, his pride and joy, sat under a tarp, awaiting his attention. He spent hours tinkering with the engine, his hands covered in grease and oil. He'd rev the engine, the loud roar echoing through the quiet countryside. Officer Johnson, parked a safe distance away, meticulously documented everything. He noted the times Jake left the house, the people he interacted with, which were few, and the errands he ran. He saw Jake drive into town to pick up groceries, always paying in cash. He saw him visit the local hardware store, purchasing tools and supplies. But he never saw Jake do anything overtly suspicious. Days turned into a week, and Officer Johnson's reports remained consistent. Jake was a loner, a gearhead, a man who kept to himself. But Detective Miller wasn't ready to dismiss him. He knew that appearances could be deceiving. He needed more evidence, something concrete that could tie Jake to the bank robbery. Back at the station, Detective Miller reviewed Officer Johnson's reports, searching for any anomaly, any detail that might have been overlooked. He focused on Jake's trips to town, the items he purchased, the people he encountered. He cross-referenced this information with the witness statements from the bank robbery. Then, he noticed something. One of the witnesses, Mrs. Gable, had mentioned seeing a man with a similar build to Jake lingering near the bank a few days before the robbery. She couldn't be certain it was him, but she remembered his piercing blue eyes. Detective Miller felt a surge of adrenaline. It was a long shot, but it was a lead. He decided it was time to bring Jake in for questioning. He knew he didn't have enough evidence to arrest him, but he could try to rattle him, to see if he would slip up and reveal something. He instructed Officer Johnson to bring Jake in, but to proceed with caution. Jake was not to be considered armed and dangerous, but they couldn't be too careful. The game was about to change. The hunter was about to become the hunted. Officer Johnson approached Jake's farmhouse cautiously. He knocked on the door, his hand resting near his holster. Jake opened the door, his piercing blue eyes narrowed with suspicion. "Mr. Jake, I'm Officer Johnson with the Meadow Creek Police Department. We'd like you to come down to the station for questioning." Jake's expression remained unchanged. "Questioning about what?" "We're investigating the bank robbery that occurred earlier this week. We believe you may have some information that could help us with our investigation." Jake hesitated for a moment, then nodded slowly. "All right, I'll come with you." At the police station, Detective Miller waited in the interrogation room. The room was small and sterile, with a single table and 2 chairs. He wanted to create an atmosphere of intimidation, to make Jake feel uncomfortable. Jake entered the room, his eyes scanning the surroundings. He sat down at the table, his posture relaxed but alert. "Mr. Jake," Detective Miller began, his voice calm but firm, "we appreciate you coming in to speak with us. We understand you're new to Meadow Creek." "That's right," Jake replied, his voice even and controlled. "I just moved here a few weeks ago." "And what brings you to our little town?" "I was looking for a quiet place to settle down, work on my car." "Your Mustang, right? Nice car. We understand you spend a lot of time working on it." "It's a hobby of mine." Detective Miller leaned forward, his eyes locking with Jake's. "Mr. Jake, we found a glove at the scene of the bank robbery." "A leather glove. A rather expensive one, it seems. We also know that you work on high-performance engines, and that you use a rather rare type of motor oil. Does any of this sound familiar to you?" Jake's expression remained unchanged. "I own a pair of leather gloves, yes. And I use motor oil to work on my car. But I have nothing to do with the bank robbery. We also have a witness who remembers seeing a man with your build, with your piercing blue eyes, lingering near the bank a few days before the robbery." Jake paused for a moment, his eyes darting around the room. "I don't know what you're talking about. I've never been near that bank." Detective Miller smiled faintly. "Mr. Jake, we're just trying to get to the truth. And the truth is, all the evidence seems to be pointing in your direction. We know you were at the bank. We know you wore gloves. And we know you used that rare motor oil. It's only a matter of time before we find the missing piece that connects you to this crime." Detective Miller paused, letting his words sink in. He watched Jake closely, looking for any sign of guilt or deception. But Jake remained impassive, his face a mask of indifference. Detective Miller knew he had to try a different approach. He needed to find something more, something concrete, to break Jake's composure. He just needed to keep the pressure on. The days following Jake's questioning dragged on, each one filled with a growing sense of unease in Meadow Creek. The bank remained closed, its doors shuttered, a stark reminder of the violence that had shattered the town's tranquility. People whispered amongst themselves, their voices hushed with fear and speculation. Mrs. Gable's cookie sales plummeted. Nobody felt like celebrating with a sweet treat. Farmer McGregor postponed his tractor purchase. He didn't feel comfortable taking out a loan when the town felt so unstable. Even little Lily's dreams of a shiny, red bicycle seemed distant and uncertain. Detective Miller, frustrated by the lack of concrete evidence, decided to change tactics. He knew he couldn't hold Jake indefinitely without probable cause. He needed to find something that would definitively link him to the crime. He tasked Officer Johnson with continuing the surveillance, but with a new directive: find a way to search Jake's car. "He's meticulous," Detective Miller told Johnson. "If he was involved in the robbery, he would have taken steps to cover his tracks. But criminals always make mistakes. He might have stashed something in his car, something he thought we'd never find." Officer Johnson, understanding the urgency of the situation, intensified his efforts. He followed Jake everywhere, documenting his every move. He learned Jake's routines, his habits, his weaknesses. He knew that Jake always parked his Mustang in the same spot, a secluded area behind his farmhouse. One evening, as Jake was working on his car, Officer Johnson noticed something unusual. Jake had left the car door ajar, and a small, dark object was visible on the floorboard. It was partially obscured by the seat, but Officer Johnson could make out the faint outline of a glove. He quickly radioed Detective Miller, his voice filled with excitement. "Detective, I think I've found something. I saw a glove in Jake's car. It looks like it could be the matching one." Detective Miller's heart leaped. This was it. This was the break they had been waiting for. He instructed Officer Johnson to secure the area and obtain a warrant to search Jake's car. The game was about to reach its climax. The truth was about to be revealed. Detective Miller worked swiftly, presenting the evidence to the judge. The circumstantial nature of it all weighed on him, but the discovery of the second glove was the tipping point. The judge, after careful consideration, agreed that there was probable cause to believe that evidence related to the bank robbery could be found in Jake's vehicle. He signed the warrant, his face grim. Armed with the warrant, Detective Miller and Officer Johnson returned to Jake's farmhouse. It was late, the moon casting long shadows across the yard. They approached the Mustang cautiously, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. Jake emerged from the house, his expression a mixture of surprise and anger. "What's going on?" he demanded. "We have a warrant to search your vehicle, Mr. Jake," Detective Miller replied, his voice calm and authoritative. Jake's face paled. He knew this was it. He knew the game was up. He watched silently as the officers began their search, meticulously examining every inch of the Mustang's interior. Officer Johnson carefully lifted the driver's seat, revealing the glove that he had spotted earlier. He held it up for Detective Miller to see. It was a perfect match to the glove found at the bank. The same leather, the same size, the same distinctive stitching. And, upon closer inspection, the same faint stain of rare motor oil. "Well, Mr. Jake," Detective Miller said, a hint of satisfaction in his voice, "it looks like we found what we were looking for." Jake remained silent, his eyes fixed on the glove. He knew there was no denying it now. He was caught. The officers continued their search, but they didn't find anything else of significance. The glove was the key piece of evidence, the final nail in the coffin. Detective Miller placed Jake under arrest. As they led him away, Jake glanced back at his Mustang, his expression a mixture of regret and resignation. His quiet life in Meadow Creek was over. The game was truly over. Now it was time to face the music. The consequences of his actions were about to catch up with him. The people of Meadow Creek could finally breathe a sigh of relief. Back at the police station, Jake sat alone in the interrogation room, his face pale and drawn. He nervously tapped his fingers on the table, his eyes darting around the room as if searching for an escape. Detective Miller entered the room, carrying the two gloves in a clear plastic bag. He placed the bag on the table in front of Jake. "Recognize these, Mr. Jake?" Detective Miller asked, his voice calm but firm. Jake stared at the gloves, his expression unreadable. He remained silent. "We found this one at the scene of the bank robbery," Detective Miller said, pointing to the glove found near the entrance. "And we found this one hidden under the driver's seat of your car." Detective Miller paused, letting his words sink in. He watched Jake closely, looking for any sign of remorse or guilt. But Jake remained impassive, his face a mask of indifference. "We know you were at the bank, Mr. Jake," Detective Miller continued. "We know you wore these gloves. And we know you used that rare motor oil. It's time to tell us the truth. It's time to confess." Jake finally spoke, his voice barely a whisper. "I didn't do it," he said. "I swear, I had nothing to do with the bank robbery." "Then how do you explain the matching gloves, Mr. Jake? How do you explain the motor oil? How do you explain the witness who saw you near the bank?" "It's all a coincidence," Jake insisted. "I can explain everything." "Then explain it, Mr. Jake," Detective Miller challenged. "Explain why your glove was found at the scene of the crime. Explain why you have the matching glove hidden in your car. Explain why a witness saw you near the bank. Explain all of it." Jake hesitated, searching for the right words. But he couldn't find them. He knew he was trapped. He knew there was no way out. Detective Miller leaned forward, his eyes locking with Jake's. "Mr. Jake, we have enough evidence to convict you. We know you committed this crime. It's time to come clean. It's time to take responsibility for your actions." Jake remained silent, his head bowed in defeat. He knew that Detective Miller was right. He was caught. He was guilty. And there was nothing he could do to change it. The silence in the room was heavy, thick with unspoken words and unacknowledged guilt. The game was truly over. Detective Miller sighed, running a hand over his tired face. He knew that Jake was lying, but he needed a confession. He needed Jake to admit his guilt, not just for the sake of the investigation, but for the sake of the people of Meadow Creek. They deserved to know the truth. He decided to try a different approach. He turned off the harsh overhead light, plunging the interrogation room into near darkness. He sat in silence for a few moments, allowing Jake to stew in his own thoughts. "Mr. Jake," Detective Miller began, his voice soft and conversational, "I know you're not a bad person. I think you made a mistake. You got desperate. You needed money. And you made a bad decision." Jake remained silent, his eyes fixed on the table. "But you can make things right, Mr. Jake," Detective Miller continued. "You can confess. You can tell us where the money is. You can help us bring closure to the people of Meadow Creek." Detective Miller paused, giving Jake time to respond. But Jake remained silent, his face buried in his hands. "Think about the people you hurt, Mr. Jake," Detective Miller pleaded. "Think about Mrs. Gable, who was so terrified she can barely bake cookies anymore. Think about Mr. Peterson, who can't sleep at night because he keeps reliving the robbery. Think about little Lily, who's afraid to walk down Main Street." Detective Miller's words seemed to have an effect on Jake. He slowly lifted his head, his eyes filled with tears. I didn't mean to hurt anyone," Jake stammered, his voice choked with emotion. I needed the money. What did you need the money for, Mr. Jake? Detective Miller asked gently. Jake hesitated for a moment, then blurted out the truth. My mom. She's sick. She needs an operation. And I didn't have the money to pay for it. Detective Miller listened patiently as Jake continued his story, his voice trembling with emotion. He explained how he had tried everything to raise money for his mother's operation, but nothing had worked. He had lost his job, his savings were depleted, and he had nowhere else to turn. Desperate, he had made the foolish decision to rob the bank. I know it was wrong, Jake sobbed. I know I hurt a lot of people. But I didn't know what else to do. I just wanted to save my mom. Detective Miller listened patiently, his expression a mixture of sympathy and disappointment. He understood Jake's desperation, but he couldn't condone his actions. Where's the money, Jake? Detective Miller asked gently. We need to recover the money and return it to the bank. Jake hesitated for a moment, then revealed the location where he had hidden the stolen cash. It was stashed in an old well near his farmhouse, carefully wrapped in plastic bags to protect it from the elements. Detective Miller nodded, relieved that the money would be recovered. He knew that this confession would bring closure to the people of Meadow Creek. But there was still one thing that bothered him. He couldn't understand why Jake had worn gloves during the robbery. It seemed like an unnecessary precaution, especially since he had left one of the gloves behind. Why the gloves, Jake? Detective Miller asked. Why did you wear gloves during the robbery? Jake hesitated for a moment, then explained that he had a skin condition that caused his hands to sweat excessively. He wore gloves to prevent his fingerprints from being left at the scene of the crime. Detective Miller nodded, understanding dawning in his eyes. It all made sense now. The gloves weren't just a precaution, they were a necessity. He knew that Jake's confession wouldn't erase the harm he had caused, but it was a start. It was a step towards redemption. And it was a testament to the power of truth and the importance of compassion. The long night was finally coming to an end. The sun would rise again on Meadow Creek, bringing with it a renewed sense of hope and healing. The nightmare was finally over. Or so it seemed. There was still one more piece of the puzzle to uncover. One more secret to be revealed. The scene shifts. We see Jake, masked and hooded, bursting through the doors of the Meadow Creek Savings and Loan. The pistol gleams in his hand, reflecting the harsh fluorescent lights of the bank. He yells, his voice distorted, everyone on the ground. Now. The tellers scream, their faces contorted with fear. Mrs. Gable clutches her purse, her eyes wide with terror. Mr. Abernathy trembles, his frail body shaking uncontrollably. Jake leaps over the counter, shoving Mr. Peterson aside. He fumbles with the vault door, his hands sweating profusely despite the gloves. Finally, the vault swings open, revealing stacks of cash. He frantically stuffs the money into the duffel bag, his heart pounding in his chest. As he makes his escape, he trips, stumbling towards the exit. He catches himself, but his glove snags on the door handle. He pulls free, but the glove tears loose, falling to the ground unnoticed. He glances back, but the chaos inside the bank prevents him from seeing it. He sprints to the getaway car, his lungs burning, his legs aching. He throws the duffel bag into the back seat and jumps behind the wheel. He starts the engine, the Mustang roaring to life. He speeds away, leaving behind a scene of utter chaos and fear. He glances in the rearview mirror, his heart filled with regret and remorse. He knows he has made a terrible mistake. He knows he has hurt a lot of people. But he tells himself that it was all for his mother. It was the only way to save her. The flashback ends, returning to the interrogation room. Jake sits with his head in his hands, his body racked with sobs. Detective Miller watches him, his expression a mixture of sympathy and understanding. He knows that Jake is telling the truth. He knows that he acted out of desperation. But he also knows that he must be held accountable for his actions. The law is the law. And justice must be served. Even in Meadow Creek. Especially in Meadow Creek. The town deserves nothing less. Detective Miller cleared his throat, preparing to ask the final, crucial question. The question that would determine Jake's fate. The question that would reveal the last remaining secret. He knew it was a long shot, but he had to try. He had to know. He had to ask. "Jake," he began, his voice low and steady, "there's something you're not telling me. Something you're still hiding. What is it?" Jake looked up, his eyes filled with fear and uncertainty. He hesitated for a moment, then took a deep breath and began to speak. The truth was about to be revealed. The final secret was about to be exposed. And it would change everything. "It wasn't just for my mom," Jake confessed, his voice barely audible above the hum of the interrogation room lights. "There was someone else involved." Detective Miller leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "Someone else? Who?" Jake hesitated, his face etched with fear. "I can't tell you. They'll hurt me. They'll hurt my mom." "We can protect you, Jake," Detective Miller assured him. "We can protect your mom. Just tell us who was involved." Jake took a deep breath, steeling himself for what he was about to reveal. It was Mr. Peterson." Detective Miller's eyes widened in disbelief. Mr. Peterson, the kind, gentle bank manager. It seemed impossible. "Mr. Peterson helped me plan the robbery," Jake explained. "He knew the security codes. He knew when the vault would be full. He even gave me the layout of the bank." Detective Miller struggled to process this information. It was a shocking revelation. He couldn't believe that Mr. Peterson, a pillar of the community, could be involved in such a crime. "Why, Jake?" Detective Miller asked, his voice filled with disbelief. "Why would Mr. Peterson do this?" "He was in debt," Jake explained. "He owed a lot of money to some dangerous people. He needed the money to pay them back." Detective Miller nodded slowly, understanding dawning in his eyes. It all made sense now. Mr. Peterson's nervousness, his haunted look, his trembling hands, it was all a sign of his guilt. "Where is he now, Jake?" Detective Miller asked, his voice urgent. "We need to find him." "He's gone," Jake replied. "He left town right after the robbery. He said he was going to disappear." Detective Miller felt a surge of frustration. He knew that finding Mr. Peterson would be difficult. But he couldn't give up. He owed it to the people of Meadow Creek to bring both criminals to justice. The lone glove had led him to Jake, but it was Jake who had revealed the bigger conspiracy. The truth was out, and now the real work began. The hunt for Mr. Peterson was on. The saga of the Meadow Creek savings and loan was far from over. It had just taken an unexpected, and decidedly darker, turn. Following Jake's directions, the police recovered the stolen money from the old well near his farmhouse. The cash was still neatly bundled, just as it had been in the bank vault. It was a small victory, a glimmer of hope in the midst of a dark and complicated case. Jake was formally charged with bank robbery and conspiracy. He was held in custody, awaiting trial. Despite his cooperation, the law was clear. He would have to face the consequences of his actions. Meanwhile, the hunt for Mr. Peterson intensified. Detective Miller issued an all-points bulletin, alerting law enforcement agencies across the country. He contacted the FBI, seeking their assistance in tracking down the missing bank manager. He knew that Peterson could be anywhere, hiding under an assumed identity, trying to escape his past. The news of Mr. Peterson's involvement sent shockwaves through Meadow Creek. The townsfolk were stunned, betrayed by someone they had trusted for so long. They couldn't believe that the kind, gentle bank manager could be capable of such a deceitful act. Mrs. Gable wept openly, her heart broken by the betrayal. Farmer McGregor shook his head in disbelief, his faith in humanity shaken. Even little Lily struggled to understand how someone could be so dishonest. But amidst the shock and disappointment, there was also a sense of relief. The mystery of the bank robbery had finally been solved. The stolen money had been recovered. And the criminals would be brought to justice. The bank began the process of reopening, its doors soon to welcome back the community. The tellers started cleaning up the mess, trying to restore a sense of normalcy to the building. Mr. Abernathy visited, offering words of support and encouragement. Meadow Creek was slowly healing, but the scars of the robbery would remain. The town had learned a valuable lesson about the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface, even in the most unsuspecting places. The power of community, however, was proving to be even stronger. The people of Meadow Creek would rebuild, they would recover, and they would never forget the events that had tested their resilience and their faith. The future was still uncertain, but one thing was clear: Meadow Creek would emerge from this crisis stronger and more united than ever before. The pursuit of Mr. Peterson, however, continued. The final chapter had yet to be written. A few weeks later, the Meadow Creek Savings and Loan reopened its doors. The atmosphere was different, more somber, but also more resilient. The tellers, though still a bit shaken, greeted customers with warm smiles, determined to restore a sense of normalcy. The scent of freshly brewed coffee once again filled the air, a comforting reminder of the town's enduring spirit. Mrs. Gable was one of the first customers to return. She deposited her weekly earnings from her cookie sales, her heart filled with gratitude for Detective Miller's dedication. Farmer McGregor followed, his plans for a new tractor back on track. Even little Lily visited, her eyes sparkling with excitement as she made a deposit towards her shiny, red bicycle. The town breathed a collective sigh of relief. The bank robbery had been a traumatic experience, but it had also brought the community closer together. They had faced adversity, and they had emerged stronger and more united than ever before. Detective Miller, though weary from the long investigation, felt a sense of satisfaction. He had brought Jake to justice, recovered the stolen money, and helped to restore peace to Meadow Creek. But he knew that his work wasn't finished. The hunt for Mr. Peterson continued, a constant reminder of the darkness that still lurked beneath the surface. The town held a small ceremony to honor Detective Miller for his service. Mayor Thompson presented him with a plaque, thanking him for his dedication and his unwavering commitment to justice. The townsfolk applauded, their hearts filled with gratitude. Detective Miller accepted the plaque with humility, acknowledging the support of the community and the hard work of his fellow officers. He knew that he couldn't have solved the case without them. As the ceremony concluded, Detective Miller received a phone call. It was from the FBI. They had located Mr. Peterson. He was hiding in a small town in Mexico, working as a bartender. Detective Miller felt a surge of adrenaline. The final chapter was about to be written. The long journey was about to reach its end. The truth was about to be revealed, once and for all. He knew that bringing Mr. Peterson to justice wouldn't erase the harm that had been done, but it would bring a sense of closure to the people of Meadow Creek. And that was all that mattered. The final act was about to begin. Detective Miller sat on the porch of his small house, watching the sunset paint the sky with vibrant colors. The air was crisp and cool, carrying the scent of freshly cut grass. He sipped his coffee, his mind replaying the events of the past few weeks. He thought about the lone glove, lying on the floor of the bank, a seemingly insignificant detail that had unlocked the entire case. He thought about the rare motor oil, the slight limp, the witness sighting, all the small pieces of the puzzle that had eventually come together. He smiled faintly, realizing the importance of even the smallest details in solving crimes. It was a lesson he had learned long ago, but it was one that he was constantly reminded of. He thought about Jake, a desperate young man who had made a terrible mistake. He felt sympathy for him, but he also knew that he had to be held accountable for his actions. He thought about Mr. Peterson, a pillar of the community who had betrayed everyone's trust. He felt a sense of anger and disappointment, but he also knew that Peterson was a victim of his own circumstances. He knew that he couldn't judge them. He could only enforce the law and try to bring justice to Meadow Creek. He thought about the people of Meadow Creek, their resilience, their kindness, their unwavering spirit. He was proud to be a part of their community. He thought about his fellow officers, their hard work, their dedication, their unwavering commitment to serving and protecting. He was grateful for their support. He took another sip of his coffee, his mind at peace. He had done his job. He had brought justice to Meadow Creek. And he had learned a valuable lesson about the power of observation and the importance of compassion. The phone rang, breaking his reverie. It was Officer Johnson. "Detective," Johnson said, his voice excited, "I just wanted to let you know that Mr. Peterson has been apprehended. He's in custody, awaiting extradition." Detective Miller smiled, a sense of closure washing over him. The final chapter had been written. The story of the Meadow Creek savings and loan had finally come to an end. The lone glove had done its job. It had led him to the truth. And the truth had set Meadow Creek free. The darkness had been vanquished, and the light had returned. The town could finally rest easy, knowing that justice had been served. But Miller knew, as the sun dipped below the horizon, that there would always be another case, another mystery, another opportunity to serve and protect. That was his calling, his duty, his life. And he would continue to answer the call, one detail at a time. One glove at a time. Life in Meadow Creek gradually returned to normal. The bank thrived once more, a symbol of the town's resilience and enduring spirit. Mrs. Gable's cookie sales soared, her treats once again bringing joy to the community. Farmer McGregor proudly drove his new tractor through the streets, a testament to his hard work and determination. And little Lily finally got her shiny, red bicycle, riding it with a newfound sense of freedom and security. The townsfolk learned to appreciate the simple things in life, the bonds of community, the importance of trust and honesty. They had faced adversity, and they had emerged stronger and more united than ever before. Jake's mother received the operation she needed, thanks to the recovered funds. Jake, though facing a lengthy prison sentence, found solace in the fact that his mother was healthy and safe. Mr. Peterson was extradited back to the United States, where he stood trial for his crimes. He was found guilty and sentenced to prison, his reputation forever tarnished. Detective Miller continued to serve and protect the people of Meadow Creek, his dedication unwavering, his commitment to justice unwavering. He became a local hero, a symbol of hope and security. Years passed. Meadow Creek remained a peaceful and close-knit town, a place where everyone knew everyone and where the bonds of community were strong. The bank robbery became a distant memory, a reminder of the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface, but also a testament to the power of resilience and the importance of unity. One sunny afternoon, Detective Miller sat on the porch of his small house, watching little Lily ride her shiny, red bicycle down Main Street. He smiled, his heart filled with peace and contentment. He had done his job. He had brought justice to Meadow Creek. And he had helped to create a safer and more secure community for everyone. He glanced at his old, worn leather gloves, lying on the table beside him. He picked them up, running his fingers over the soft leather. He knew that even the smallest details could make a difference. He knew that even a lone glove could unlock the truth. And he knew that as long as he continued to serve and protect, Meadow Creek would always be a place where the light triumphed over the darkness. The end.